Barry Gibb's story begins far from flashing lights and sold-out arenas, rooted instead in a family where music was as natural as breathing. Born Barry Allen Crompton Gibb on September 1st, 1946, on the Isle of Man, he grew up surrounded by melody, harmony, and the constant presence of his brothers. From a young age, Barry showed an instinctive understanding of music, not just as sound, but as emotional language. When the family moved to Australia, those early performances alongside Robin and Maurice were less about ambition and more about togetherness. They were brothers first, musicians second. Over time, that shared bond would become the foundation of the Bee Gees' unmistakable sound. Barry's role gradually evolved into that of musical anchor, guiding harmonies, shaping melodies, and writing songs that felt deeply personal yet universally relatable. Even in these early years, the seeds of both triumph and loss were quietly being planted, long before fame would magnify every joy and every sorrow. The rise of the Bee Gees and a singular voice. As the Bee Gees rose to international prominence, Barry Gibb emerged as a defining force behind their success. His falsetto, once an experiment, became a signature that helped reshape popular music. Alongside Robin and Maurice, Barry helped craft songs that blended vulnerability with polish, emotion with precision. The late 1960s and 1970s were transformative years, marked by global hits and creative breakthroughs. Albums tied to the Saturday Night Fever era didn't just dominate charts, they shaped culture. Yet behind the acclaim was a relentless work ethic and a deep sense of responsibility. Barry wasn't just writing songs, he was protecting a shared dream built with his brothers. His songwriting extended beyond the group, reaching artists across genres, from soul to country, proving that great songs transcend labels. Despite the scale of success, Barry remained grounded in the idea that music was a family language, one learned at home and refined together, long before the world began listening. Love, stability, and the quiet strength of family. While fame brought constant motion, Barry Gibb's personal life eventually found its center in lasting partnership. After a brief first marriage during his teenage years, Barry met Linda Gray, a moment he would later describe as life-changing. Their marriage in 1970 marked the beginning of a rare constant in an industry known for impermanence. Linda became his emotional anchor, offering stability as the world around them shifted. Together, they raised 5 children and built a home where family came before celebrity. Barry has often credited his wife and children with keeping him grounded, reminding him who he was beyond the stage. Fatherhood reshaped his priorities, and later, becoming a grandfather added new depth to his sense of legacy. In a life filled with applause and public recognition, it was these private moments, shared meals, quiet conversations, everyday routines, that gave Barry balance. Family, not fame, became his true measure of success. Andy Gibb, talent, light, and endless promise. Andy Gibb was different from the beginning. As the youngest brother, he carried an effortless charm and a natural musicality that felt instinctive rather than studied. Barry saw this immediately, not as competition, but as something precious to protect. When Andy's solo career took off in the late 1970s, Barry was deeply involved, offering guidance, songwriting support, and unwavering belief. Andy's voice had a warmth that connected instantly with listeners, and his success felt inevitable. Yet Barry also sensed the vulnerability beneath the spotlight. Andy was young, sensitive, and deeply eager to be loved, qualities that endeared him to fans, but also left him emotionally exposed. At 78, Barry would later reflect that Andy's rise happened faster than his ability to process it. The world saw confidence and charm, but Barry saw a brother still finding his footing. That awareness stayed with him long after the applause faded. The weight of fame and unspoken worries. In later reflections, Barry spoke gently but honestly about the pressures Andy faced. Fame, especially when it arrives early, can blur boundaries and overwhelm even the strongest spirits. Barry admitted that he worried constantly, not about Andy's talent, but about his emotional well-being. There were moments of hope and moments of concern, times when Andy seemed steady and others when he struggled to find balance. Barry has been careful not to reduce his brother's life to hardship, emphasizing instead that Andy was full of joy, generosity, and humor. Still, he acknowledged that love alone cannot always shield someone from their own inner battles. As an older brother, Barry carried a quiet sense of responsibility, often questioning whether guidance, timing, or circumstance could have changed the outcome. These reflections were never about blame, but about understanding. They were the thoughts of someone who loved deeply and wished, even decades later, that love could have done more. Loss that never fully fades. Andy Gibb's passing in 1988 marked a profound turning point in Barry's life. At just 30 years old, Andy left behind not only unfulfilled potential, but a silence that echoed through the family. Barry has shared that the timing made the loss even harder to bear, coming so close to Andy's birthday, after unresolved words and missed chances. With age came the courage to admit how deeply that moment shaped him. Success, awards, and recognition never softened the absence. Instead, they existed alongside it. Barry has said that grief doesn't disappear, it simply changes form. It becomes quieter, more reflective, but always present. Every performance, every familiar melody carries traces of memory. For Barry, Andy is not frozen in tragedy, but remembered in laughter, music, and brotherhood. The loss didn't define Andy's life, but it permanently shaped Barry's understanding of love, time, and what truly matters. Music as memory and tribute. For Barry Gibb, music has always been more than performance. It is remembrance. Songs written decades ago still carry emotional fingerprints of shared moments, late-night writing sessions, and voices blended in harmony. After losing his brothers, Barry found that music became both refuge and responsibility. Performing wasn't about nostalgia, it was about keeping connection alive. Andy's presence, in particular, remains woven into melodies and lyrics, not as tribute alone, but as continuation. Barry has said that when he sings, he feels his brothers beside him, not in sorrow, but in spirit. This perspective transformed grief into purpose. Rather than retreat from the stage, Barry chose to honor the past by sharing it. Each performance became an act of gratitude for the years they had, the music they made, and the bond that outlived loss. In this way, music allowed Barry to carry his family forward. Reflection, honesty, and the passage of time. At 78, Barry Gibb's reflections carry the clarity that only time can bring. Speaking openly about Andy wasn't about revelation or confession. It was about truth, shaped by love. Age softened the need for guarded silence and replaced it with gentle honesty. Barry acknowledged pride without hesitation, regret without self-punishment, and love without limits. He spoke not as a legend, but as a brother who had lived long enough to understand that perfection is never the goal. Connection is. These reflections were not meant to rewrite history, but to humanize it. In sharing his story, Barry offered something rare, permission to hold joy and sorrow at the same time. His words resonated not because of fame, but because of their sincerity. They reminded listeners that behind every public triumph lies a private life shaped by relationships, choices, and moments that can never be repeated. An enduring legacy of love and brotherhood. Ultimately, Barry Gibb's story is not defined by charts or accolades, but by loyalty to family, to music, and to memory. Telling the truth about Andy was an act of love, not closure. It affirmed that Andy was never a footnote or a cautionary tale, but an essential part of the Gibb family's heart. Barry's legacy now stands as one of resilience, compassion, and emotional honesty. He continues to sing not just for audiences, but for the brothers who shaped his life. In doing so, he reminds the world that legacy is not about how long someone lives, but how deeply they are remembered. Through music, reflection, and enduring love, Barry Gibb ensures that Andy's light and the bond they shared remains alive, not in sadness, but in meaning, warmth, and the timeless language of song.